right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fangirl Friday. This is another edition of Fangirl Friday Live. My name is Anita Castellar. I am the fangirl behind Fangirl Consulting and Brand Management. That's our company. We're a licensing and consulting agency. Welcome again, and thank you for spending your time with us. If this is your first time, hopefully we won't bore you to death and you'll come back. If this is your repeating time,
That's
thank you
a
for
nice
coming
setup
back.
for me.
so, so I want to introduce Brian. Hi, come welcome. How are you?
Very good. How are you guys doing?
I'm good.
All
Introduce
right.
yourself to us, Brian.
Well, I'm Brian. I'm
Brian
a
who?
freelance illustrator, or I believe you discussed a professional illustrator, professional artist
Yeah.
for the entertainment industry. I've been doing artwork for about a quarter century, in and out of different avenues of the entertainment industry, all gearing around fandom type properties, from multiple pop culture things and starting with underground comic books, advancing into above ground comic books,
Mm-hmm.
working with companies like Chaos Comics back in the day, transcending over to doing a couple different Marvel projects, and then stuff in the toy industry, and
You've been around a while.
eventually, what's that?
You've been around a while.
Yeah, I'm old. Thanks.
No,
Cool.
no.
Yeah, I hear you.
Don't worry.
You're in the
I've known you
beard?
that long.
Good.
I've known you that long, so we're both old.
What do you
But
have?
for everyone who doesn't know, this is Brian Rood, ROOD, of Brian Rood Art, right? That's kind of how your
Sure.
company name is, Brian Rood Art.
That's the legal thing. Yeah,
So
that's
if
it.
you
That's
search
on
him out,
that's on the taxes.
that's right. If you search him out on the internet or on some kind of Facebook, content, you will see that he's been around. He's been at San Diego Comic-Con multiple times, Star Wars Celebration multiple times.
Mhm.
So, I want to step back and ask you about your
Yeah.
fandoms, how you got interested in fandom, how'd you get into art and being
Yeah,
in
right
the
on.
industry? Tell me a little bit about that.
All right. Well, I was always the kid that could draw. There's always that kid in class, right?
Yeah.
There's like the sporty kid, the good-looking kid, the kid that can draw. Well, I was that dude.
Uh-huh.
All right, I got three of them. No.
And you're very humble.
Yeah. No, I always loved drawing, and I mean, have drawn as far back as I can remember, forever and ever. Even got like the little wood blocks with my Popeye cartoon characters running from when I was like 4. But saying that I'm from Toledo, Ohio, who knows, how are you going to do any kind of artwork as a living working here? That wasn't on the agenda. It was, you're going to probably work like at Chrysler or GM or one of the factories, or maybe something in the medical field, like over the Toledo Hospital, the big industries in the area. So I said, no way, I'm going to do graphic design. Maybe I'll work for the paper and do the Sunday ads for like Kroger's or something exciting, right?
Exciting.
So during high school, I took a commercial art class, which was like a vocational program. And it was a total win for a guy that didn't really love academics so much, because it was a 3-hour block for junior and senior year. And it was like like vocational things. It was like kind of felt like a work environment thing,
Yeah.
and just ran you through the process while teaching you graphic design. And I mean, this was way back in those 90s. So, I think we had a computer in the class.
Yeah.
Like type in what you wanted to do before you could even do it, just to get to the thing that you thought you might be able to do on the computer.
Right.
But I did that for 2 years, loved it. It was actually the first thing I did in school, besides art classes and stuff, that I was really like invested in. Thought it was cool. So after that, I did like a break year, because I wasn't like the kid with scholarships or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to work full time to save up just enough money to like start college. So I wasn't trying to do the whole loan thing and try and pay for it as much as I could out of pocket with help from parents and stuff. And I found a little local college that was just like a 2-year associate's degree program. And they had a pretty solid graphic design program. Again, I never thought I'd be like a painter or an illustrator per se, because how did you make money doing that?
Right.
Wasn't in the realm or the circles of what I ran in, or
People
nobody in the
always
family.
think starving artists, right?
Yeah, totally. Especially to a dad. My dad still is an extremely hard worker, but he's all, cars. He's a millwright at Chrysler. Guy knows his stuff. He can do anything without even thinking about it. But to tell a guy like that, and from the Midwest, like, I'm going to be an artist. No, you're not. That's a nice hobby. But
so you went to the school and then you got your degree.
Yeah, I did the graphics design program. And towards the latter part of that, there was an airbrushing class that was offered. Not to date myself, but I thought that'd be cool. I've always thought airbrushing was neat, never messed around with it. And through that part of the school, I met a couple of guys that were going to Wizard World in Chicago. I didn't even know what a comic book convention was at the time. I never heard of them.
Wow.
It was like 95-ish, mid 90s.
Yeah.
Like right on the cusp of everything there was like rumors of like that first real live action Spider-Man movie. And this is about, it might have been 96, I forget exactly, but that era where the Star Wars is getting re-released and pretty much the industry that you and I both live and love in now. Well, we don't love in it, but live in it. Right when this was all taken off. Right. And superhero movies, X-Men and Spider-Man, that like all of a sudden it was like, oh, you can do like a real superhero movie with real actors and real effects that is believable.
Right.
So
and it's okay, right? And it was accepted and it was okay. And
yeah, right.
Everybody was great with it. Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to like a record show when they said we're going to go to a comic book show, a comic convention in Chicago. I was like, well, I'll go to Chicago for the weekend. I've been there once before for a press convention. I was working, at the time I was actually working as a pressman, doing the big like lithography printing and stuff. I thought that was artistic enough. You're printing. It's artsy. There you go. I found the trade. But I went up there, man. I walked in the doors of Wizard World in Chicago. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Because I had no idea. I thought it was going to be like a record show or something. Flip through a couple of boxes of comics and find some cool things.
Crates of stuff, right? Yeah.
I didn't know there was going to be like the booths and everybody, it was pretty major, like Marvel and DC and all that. I had no idea what I was getting into. But the minute I walked in those doors, man, I was like, all right, this is cool. Didn't know this existed. Then a friend took me and was like, check this out. It's called Artist Alley. And you walk me through Artist Alley and walking up and down Artist Alley. I'm like, you gotta be, this is insane. You mean I can just pay like $80? Anybody can and get a table here and set up and hope that somebody from DC or Lucasfilm or Marvel or any of these companies, they're independent companies. Like they might hire you on the spot, literally. Like you just get a business card and stuff. So that was the kickoff to getting into this industry. Like I did that and I said, all right, cool, man. So I kept working for like another 6 months to a year full time. But at that show, I got a couple of flyers for like Pittsburgh Con, Detroit Motor City Con, stuff like that. So I just started going to all these little shows and getting a little table in Artist Alley and doing what everybody has always done in Artist Alley. Oh yeah, like Darth Vader and this and that. And just trying to do that, but then find out where the dudes from Marvel were going to be playing pool that night, or where the Lucasfilm people were having dinner and after dinner drinks,
Yeah.
And just like shoving myself in those places, hanging out by the elevators, waiting to see the one editor that I knew his name, and it's like, he's getting in, I'm going in. So
trap him in there.
That dude's stuck on an elevator for at least 3 minutes. That's definitely at least get a business card to him.
Talk about elevator pitch. I mean, how did you end up getting the legit gig? Like, I met you, sort of kind of in Hasbro when I worked at Hasbro, but then really we kind of really got to know each other more when I was at Lucasfilm. So how did you get to, to that point, right? Like, how did you end up meeting these people?
Back to the shows, man. It was hustling the shows. And I mean, we hustled hard. My wife, Michelle, Michelle, we just lived out of like minivans with boxes and just eventually started flying out to the bigger shows. But at the time it was like any decent sized show I would go to, look at the roster, and like back in the day, Sansweet was always at the shows. It's like, I think Travis or Crony, because I kind of came up with all those guys. We all hit it around the same year or two and started trying to figure it out. And
Sansweet is Steve Sansweet for anyone who's keeping track. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rancho Obi-Wan. But,
that's right.
One of those guys, somebody knows me, like, that guy, he's affiliated with Lucasfilm. Nobody knew how back then. It was like, it's kind of like pre-internet being an actual.
There was no LinkedIn.
No, not at all. They're just like, we know somehow, like he knows George and he's got a bunch of toys and collectibles and we think he actually works there somehow, and it was fan relations and stuff. Mm-hmm. But we'd see him and he was always such a huge, like, just an awesome dude, first off, super great guy. And he was always so pro artist, He would buy the little $5 Kinko's copy of a bootleg Star Wars print. Not that I ever did those, ever. Pre-Etsy.
So you hook up with the right people, eventually you meet the right people, you start
Yep.
working on some packaging designs and then, maybe some style guides and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
how does that take over?
It was pestering Steve and Troy all this for about a decade. And right about 15 years ago, 'cause my son was 15, right before my son was being born, I was like almost 30 or was 30. And I'm like, well, I guess the art thing, it's not going to hit. And I'd given like 6-month calls all the time. And I was doing plenty of stuff, but I knew I had to get to the Star Wars level because that was where it was at, right?
Yeah.
I want to do Star Wars. I've been doing this for a minute, and I've been pestering Troy every year at San Diego in that portfolio review. And every year was like, dude, you got great stuff. Maybe we'll find something for it. Well, they did finally.
Eventually.
But Steve got in touch with me. He reached out to me and he's like, hey, I can get your foot in the door essentially doing sketch cards. And it was right before Revenge of the Sith came out. It was like 3 or 5. I did way too many for my own good. I was like, I'll do as many as I need to do, whatever I need, still paying dues, man. I'll earn my keep. I will do whatever I said, a couple hundred. I'm like, I'll do 5 or 3, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a ton of those sketch cards, but kind of like the icing on the cake was right before Celebration 3 in Indianapolis. And he's like, do a bunch of sketch cards. It's going to be tedious, lousy pay, a bunch of work, but I can get your foot in the door and then I can get you approved to do an art print at Star Wars Celebration in Indianapolis. And I'd heard about the previous 2 celebrations. And this was the first one, like with the art show thing, which has obviously taken off. And that's been a huge part of my career to date, like 15 years running. I've been in almost every art show. And that was the jumping off point.
That's great.
So I did a print for Revenge of the Sith at the show, which is all the right timing with the movie coming out. And that was like the first time I had done a convention. And I had like an official licensed Lucasfilm art print.
Yeah, that seal of approval.
And I realized that these Lucasfilm fans are nuts. Oh my gosh, do they spend?
Yes,
seriously, like to that point, I remember Jerry Vanderson and I were at the show and we're just like, we were always happy to maybe make a few bucks at a show, a couple dollars, but just to cover costs was good because it was all kind of marketing and networking. Even though it was open to the fans and stuff, from our side of the table, it was just if you could just make enough money to fund doing the show and get a stack of cards that could potentially get you some work for the rest of the year to the next show, that was worth it.
Right.
But we went to that celebration, actually made money, and I remember walking to dinner the one night. I'm like, dude, so you too? Yeah, this is crazy.
Now you're both big names.
Yeah, I know, right? And it was that show really hit it off hard, and I got all the cards at that show because I did have like a ton of fan art. So I like sending stuff to Mary Franklin all the time for Bantha tracks and getting in, little like fandom things. See how perfect this conversation is for you.
Yeah. Shout out to Mary Franklin.
So just fan art, dude. I did like freaking 10 plus years of fan art for Star Wars, hoping it would hit. And I was hitting up like back in the day, all the websites that had like the art galleries, early internet stuff, and just like constantly throwing anything I would doodle or paint. Some of the stuff was good. I mean, not
but
good.
It was good enough to get noticed, right?
It was good enough to get noticed. It turned a few people looking at it and that. So like I did that for a long time, making zero money and having no like official jobs with Lucasfilm. I still do a lot of stuff with like the independent comics industry, some of the card games, stuff like that. Magic, Wizards of the Coast, little gigs here and there. A lot of independent stuff that A, I'll never show anybody. B, you'll never be able to see it unless you scour the world far and wide. And
right.
Spent a while working on a total independent comic. Really cool graphic novel, and it was like right on the time that Kingdom Come and that was coming out. So everybody who had a couple friends in an art studio, that was like painted books. Alex did it, He's like we're not local, but he's a Midwest guy. He was like the iconic living legend that everybody looked at, every artist back then. And that time era was like, it's doable. Somebody broke out. We're not all Alex Ross.
He's the urban legend, right? He's like
next level stuff. Oh, totally. But he was a late 20-something-year-old dude, and he nailed it. And you're like, hey, okay, so the whole world is changing, and it has changed. Like, you don't have to live in New York or LA because everything was coming around. Everybody was building these little websites and had like this little virtual studio thing, and you could communicate and start sending files. You didn't have to do the
so
8 by
the
10
internet democratized stuff,
yeah,
right?
it's
Like
been,
it gave everybody access.
like everybody now just, you know, these young kids, no, everybody just like takes it all for granted. But I wish I was I think I was fortunate in a way to come up in the industry where it was still like, you got to go get that painting photographed, and then you got to get an 8 by 10 transparency, and then you got to get duplicates in case the first one goes south in the mail. You got to mail that to an agent.
You were able to bridge that time period though, right? Like from physical to digital. Like we were talking a little bit before, but totally. You used to paint by hand.
I still do a ton. Yeah. Now it's done is all the jobs that I get, even though they're digital now, a lot of the digital are, the clients and companies still, oh, I'm gonna hold the coffee here. It's weird.
Have a sip. Like go ahead and have a sip. But yeah, so you were able to be in that we're in a generation though that we transitioned from everything analog to everything digital, and we had to figure out those skills along the way, and in a lot of different ways. Like everybody's learning it in their own industry and their own lives, but you were able to make that in art, and that's not always transcend easy.
Those two. No, and it's not easy, but man, it's been a super fun ride. Like you go so far with the traditional. I started with the airbrush and paint, airbrush, paintbrush, color pencil, kind of like a similar style to like kind of, if you ever seen like any of the Drew Struzan videos, like the way he works, similar to that, not exactly the same, and not trying to like jock anyone's style, but those same mediums.
Right.
And I did that for the longest time, but then I would start getting, well, first off, I got sick of all the overspray because airbrushing just doesn't matter how clean you think your studio is. One good painting gets ruined.
Yeah.
So I actually transferred over to doing more watercolor stuff. Was still utilizing the airbrush a little bit. And what I didn't know then was A, watercolor is super fun and I love it. It's probably my favorite medium. But B, I could do a watercolor portrait or painting, in a few days versus a few weeks it was taking me with all of the stenciling and the frisketing and all the stuff with the airbrush. It was just a much more relaxed vibe. And the fans loved it, and it like hit off super good, the whole watercolor thing. And that was some of the first pieces of my art that like went super big and started getting like massive. There's a Boba Fett piece I did with Acme replica, and it just went like wildfire. That was a piece like I was working with Chris Jackson back then. He was one of the art directors there. So I don't know if you remember those guys or not, but
I don't remember Chris Jackson.
Yeah, it's super. He was like the first. Him and James were a couple of the first art directors on the Star Wars line, and like those guys, like lifelong friends now. We still talk on a super regular, really solid. Everyone's moved on doing other stuff.
But that's how the fandom community is, right? Where you kind of gel with people and you support each other as you can. You give each other.
I have my best friends from growing up, but then I got this whole other like deeper friendship family thing. You and people like you and the crews we run with. Same guys, we run around
your con families, which we're missing out.
For sure. Yep.
We're missing out this week.
Con family.
Con
Exactly. Just saying all that. It's like happy to be home for 1st July in 24 years, but also like, man, it's gonna suck missing the dinners.
Yeah. We have, that's what the fandom community is about though, right? In one way, where we connect with each other, we share ideas, we get inspiration from each other, we give business to each other, to support.
Yeah, you always try to.
Yeah, because it's always about not just like supporting emotionally, that's good. But in the end,
I always think if you can align yourself with like the right group of friends and co-workers, and I have been very blessed to have like some of my dearest friends are in the industry and cats we talk with every day, and you guys know who you are. I'm not gonna say all the names, but
yeah,
name dropper. I know who avoids my calls.
Name dropper.
Yeah, right. No, it's like I always think if there's a job out there and I can't take the job, I always try to kind of pay it forward to one of my friends, even with the client, and not in a weird way or nothing, but just like, hey, I don't have time for this right now, or could I pull in a friend and we tag team this and knock it out? So I got like this little army of dudes that I work with, guys and gals that like, we can take a piece and somebody can finish it 30% and hand it off.
Right.
Like Travis and I did that a few years back with the Star Wars Celebration event. We did all the key art and marketing art and everything it was in Orlando. I think it was 4 years ago or something, but I believe that was one. I know it was. He called me. He was like, hey, can you help out with this? And we started looking and getting the parameters, everything. And our styles were similar enough, and we could kind of be like little chameleons and dial in a set style where if we looked at it, it'd be like, you did the Yoda, I did the, you know, we could tell it, but when it was all pulled together, and then one of us, depending on what piece it was for the show, if it was like the big t-shirt piece or the big poster piece or whatever, like we would do all the art, combine all these figures, and then one of us would take it and put like a final shine over the whole thing. So I had this unifying effect. But like projects like that, where a lot of folks don't even realize, like, oh, 2 dudes worked on that, you know?
Yeah. But it's also interesting because there's artwork that's very prevalent. You've worked on things that are very, very widely seen and recognized, but yet no one would know that you worked on it because your name wasn't on it, right?
The name's not on it. Yeah.
Like behind the scenes work where people see it, but you, the artist, weren't called out. So you made this leap.
Oh, I let them know. I grab them.
Yeah, no, you're very good at self-promotion.
Look at the backpack. That's mine. No.
But the thing is that, like, you know, you've also made this also continue to transition, right, in your career, where you also now have spun out from not only doing behind the scenes work in, you know, art books and such like that as well, but then now you're in the forefront. Now you're actually taking on licenses yourself. Like, tell us how you got to that point.
Starting to work with some of the licensors years ago, one of the main big ones I was working with was Acme. I'm still, you know, co-aligned and discussing future projects and things of that nature. But it was like working with them, seeing what they were doing with these properties and having this like fine art license, kind of thought, man, how fun would that? Oh, that was loud. Got a reminder on something. Oh, I'm supposed to call Anita. No. I thought how fun that would be to potentially do that and kind of like see if there was a way to get my own license. So not knowing anything about anything, what I did was, like we were discussing before we were on air here, my wife and I went out to the New York licensing show in 2005-ish, something like that, but knew nothing about licensing. I set up, you know, you go online with that and you set up all your meetings. So I was like set up the meetings with like the people that were, you know, it was some anniversary for Rocky and Jimi Hendrix estate, Elvis Presley, like everything on there that I thought was cool. I'm like, I'm setting a meeting up.
Let's talk about the Jimi Hendrix piece. I think we have an image of that.
Yeah.
So share that with everybody while you talk through it. But go ahead and
totally. Well, I did a couple pieces just as kind of teasers for the show, like jammed on a couple pieces, including that Hendrix piece you guys are going to show. And so I set these meetings up, and of course at the licensing show, everyone is setting the meetings up and they want you to come in and buy some licensing and do some stuff. Well, I went there with the mentality of like, hey, man, can you hire me? A little bit of a different pitch. And a few people at the meetings were like, what are you doing? No, we want up front. We need your money, and then you can make stuff. But with that said, I had met quite a few different people there that kind of gave me some pointers, and there was cats at Universal and like legit people that were like, this is kind of cool, like kind of ballsy of you to like come here and ask for freelance work at the licensing show, but let's actually talk after the show. So I had dabbled a little bit there, and I got all these great contacts, and actually one thing did come out. I got a Marilyn Monroe license from that. And I did. So you didn't get the Jimi
Hendrix one though. So
we just there were so many things I was dabbling with. You can show it, Jimmy. That was just a fun fan piece. But I did. That was my first. I forgot about that. My first license was a Marilyn Monroe license, and we only did like 1 or 2 pieces. Nothing hit from it because, as you know, like I've been saying lately, it's cool to say you got all these great licenses, but if you don't have the outlet to get them out there, they just sit there, you know?
Well, if nobody's buying it, right? Nobody's interested.
Yeah, exactly. And
you can create art all you want.
I can create the best art out there, but if you don't get it in front of the masses or have a partnership with somebody that we can dive into in a minute with some of the other stuff I'm doing, but it was cool. And it kind of like sharpened the teeth a little bit to where I went over the contract, saw what the whole licensing thing looked like and everything, learned about getting up fronts and not, potentially going around the up fronts. And again, I'm a father of 2, husband of 1, and a couple dogs. But it was like the licensing thing, unless you got it where it hits immediately, is a huge investment on my part to say I'm going to do this art line because no one's paying you until it hits. So I had to keep on keeping on with like the Hasbro packages and the comic book covers and whatever else freelance I was doing, Topps trading cards and stuff. And I just got very busy doing that. So it was like those first couple licenses I had went away. I mean, at one point I had some really cool stuff. I wish, God, I would have had time to do, because I was licensed with Edgar Rice Burroughs' estate.
Oh,
Tarzan.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, if you're interested, I think we know some people.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I see what Joe Jusko's doing now, where he's doing all the new covers for the whole. Oh man, guys, I don't want to touch Tarzan. After he's doing that, I'm like, nope. Nothing I can bring to the table in that one. Thanks, Joe.
But it shows how some people might think, though, that the licensing process from an art point of view is difficult, right? Where it's not really that difficult. You just have to know and put your ducks in order.
Yeah, totally. You kind of got to have like a boilerplate game plan, which needs to be adjustable, I believe, to different entities. But I think if you bring something cool to the table, which even though I didn't have all those different, Zorros and Marilyn Monroe's and all that stuff painted and Tarzan's, then they could look through the portfolio and be like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool to see what this guy who does this weird comic book, Devil Girl and Hot Rods and all that stuff, he might be able to bring something good to this table. So I had experimented a touch with licensing in the early to mid 2000s. And then the first big license I got, which was like total fluke, was a gentleman was leaning against my table at Comic-Con a few years, like 2012, I think. He's leaning there like a little too long, right? And finally, I just always tease people. He finally leans up and he's playing around on his phone the whole time. And I'm like, hey, man, it's going to be like, I don't know, 175. He's like, what? I'm like, dude, these tables are super expensive. You just occupy like 1/3 of my table for like 30 minutes on your phone with your back to me. I probably lost about $175 worth of sales or so. Joking around.
Right.
He ends up being a fella that turns around, looks at my stuff. He's like, hey, man, you into Ghostbusters? After I teased him a little bit, I'm like, yeah, pretty much. I mean, child of the 70s and 80s. Yeah. That's in my wheelhouse. He's like, well, I work for Sony. I want to talk to you about maybe developing some Ghostbusters stuff. And I'm like, what about a license? So in 2013, after teasing a guy at Comic-Con, I ended up getting a Ghostbusters license. And that went off. Everything happens for a reason in life, but that was like right in the beginnings where they're like, we're doing a new Ghostbusters movie, talking to Dan and Bill and everybody. And then that obviously didn't happen then. And what I thought was like the perfect storm of, I'm going to get a Ghostbusters license. We're going to get the original cast back. They did the other movie without the original cast.
Right.
So Ghostbusters license at that time was like,
not so much.
I sold a little bit, but it was kind of, what I thought was like right there building up to this epic, like, dude.
Right.
And we got like, I think I was the first person to ever have Bill Murray sign off to do his character likeness. So that alone was cool.
That's
and having to send like his big stipulation was, I need 15 prints of everything with me on it though for me and my kids and grandkids. And I'm like, win. Okay.
Yeah. Done. Right.
That's actually a cool thing to ask for, especially coming from Mr. Murray.
So you went from Ghostbusters, and then what's the next one after that?
I went from the Ghostbusters, and still like everything's to this point still like kind of happening, like I got a license, sold a few prints, but it wasn't the right time, wasn't the right license. Season 6, I believe, was wrapping up of The Walking Dead, and I'm watching it with my wife. And we were like, we were the every Sunday religious, fanatics of the show. Ever since that first year they had the display at Comic-Con, I'm like, they're doing a Walking Dead show?
Yeah.
That's part of the set? Oh my gosh.
I was in from the first debut, from like the Halloween debut.
Yeah, exactly.
I was in. That was it. I was done.
Nope. Like I knew of the graphic novel and was, familiar with it, but wasn't like the diehard where I'd read every one of them. But I knew that it would make potentially a really cool TV show. And I love AMC's programming. So, I suffered through watching 6 seasons, never even thinking about how I could potentially get some work with The Walking Dead. I'm like, well, why would they even listen to me? I mean, first off, it's based on a freaking epic graphic novel. They've got artists.
How can you improve on
what
that?
Could I bring to the table? Then I started thinking like, it's two kind of different entities. Like they got the comic and the graphic novel stuff, but then the TV show stuff, I'm like, well, maybe I could bring something because I'm more in that photorealism, movie poster-ish, book cover, whatever vibe.
Right.
So I got on Google. I would have had to fly out to New York to a licensing show to find these people, but now I found them on Google.
Yeah. That's how the internet has helped.
Yeah, I did a Google search, man. And I was looking up licensing and different products and realizing after there were some art pieces out there, but not very many. And most of it was just photo heavy, cool stuff, but derived from photographs, Photoshop, montages and stuff. But I found a group called Stryker that we both know. And then I realized these guys are really great people. And I didn't think I'd hear back from anyone, dude. I'm like, all right, Stryker, go to the top. Who's the main men? And I found those two and sent an email or two explaining, who I was and what I did and why it might be cool, and saying, we could utilize my artwork and you guys could kind of utilize that on different products and merch. And I explained what I'd been doing. At this point, I'd already done a couple style guides with Lucasfilm and Troy Alders over there for I forget, I guess Ep.11 at the time. Trying to keep all the years going, which came first. But I was doing some style guide stuff, and a couple of the pieces I had done, I think it was on Ep.7, were like massively successful, kind of like what you went to in the beginning, like the behind the scenes stuff that you don't see names on. And it's not part like the fine art lines I would do with Disney or license holders. It's just it's fine art / commercial art,
right?
But I mean, this one piece I did was everything from kids' pajama sets to bed sheets to coffee mugs to you name it, and having that kind of little feather in the cap, being like, no, seriously, like it works. Right. And in the email, I of course include a little PDF of the merch page of blah. Like, look how much stuff one image can go on, and all your other licensors could keep building and just like dissecting. And as I create new fine art pieces, we could utilize it in the programs. And it's kind of my main, way to make everybody see how it could work.
And then you got
that
in,
makes
and
sense.
Now you have a
lot of babbling.
For Walking
They got a
Dead.
kick out of it. So now we've got the Walking Dead license, and we're doing tons of great stuff with such a fun property and show, and such a really cool.
I think we have some of those. I see behind you, of course, the Negan. So, but we have some really cool Negan art that we can show digitally as well, so everybody can see that. And then, of course, it's still utilizing kind of your, your watercolor style.
A little bit of everything. And that's what's fun about getting like my own licenses. Now, sometimes I will do them digital so they could be utilized and extract characters for different merchandise and stuff like that. But being that I'm just doing it primarily for the fine art stuff, it's cool because I get to go back and do a lot more of the traditional.
Right.
Half the times now I'll do a digital underpainting in Photoshop or Painter, and I have a big Giclée printer. I'll print it out and actually finish it then like that guy with all the traditional mediums, where I get to scratch both itches, because I do love the digital world.
That's great.
But I miss getting out the airbrushes and the splattering of the paint and the watercolor washes and all that stuff. So now I'm like
the tools of your
bridging that gap, and it's a fun gap to bridge.
So we have the Negan art, and then we have Judith art, where she's front and center there. So that's really cool.
The Judith one was cool. And that's like how, if you're flexible, I think, and you like, I don't just do the fine art license with some of these things. Like that Judith piece, for example, was obviously part of the fine art line. But then on top of that, I work with on and off, not every backdrop, but I've done a handful of them for the Talking Dead. Like when the cast is on the couch, there's like an 8-foot tall piece of artwork behind them. I've done a handful of those for like mid-season finales or a premiere episode or something special,
Yeah, and sometimes they give them away.
They do. Yep. Yeah. They'll do like, what a great, again, that just all happened organically, but it's the live, everyone in the studio audience will get a little art print of the artwork, and then they announce what, it's also available as a fine art print for the art line, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Can't beat that.
No, you can't.
It's really cool.
But I love the new piece that you also shared with us, which it's got Negan in it again, but it's got Michonne in the forefront. But it's really bold color, and it's
the red and black. Red, black, and white.
So tell us more about that, like how you transitioned, your style is evolving.
Just, again, kind of playing around and having the license, and me getting to be a little bit of an art director on the whole thing is I get to experiment.
Yeah.
So with that one, I wanted to be kind of more of a punch in the gut type thing, whereas it's not so soft and movie poster-ish. It's kind of more graphic and bold.
Yeah.
There was
That's
no
kind of
big
how I
rhyme.
felt when I heard that Michonne wasn't going to be on the show. The punch in the
Yeah,
gut
graphic
part.
and bold.
That was
But you know,
that was kind of
she just went looking for stuff.
yeah.
She didn't like get her head lopped off or shot in the face or nothing. She's still around.
Yeah, no, I'm sure she's still gonna make her way back.
Yeah.
But then now I love that because now it's also kind of moving into other types of licenses and other colors and other like for instance, like now you've got Star Trek, right? So or you've got
I don't have the Star Trek
movies of Star
license,
Trek?
but I've done some cool
Okay.
things with the one piece in particular was done for the big convention in 2016, I think, the 50th anniversary in
Okay, yep.
New York. Yeah, Reed hired me to do kind of like I had done with Star Wars Celebration. I did all the convention art. So
Right.
the stuff on the T-shirts and the banners outside and posters and you know how they do it, just all that stuff. And that was a fun one. And that was again where I got to utilize both the traditional and the digital because we have like these breakaways of all the main characters that are in the final montage. So I had to paint all those separately and scan them and then compose the big key art piece out of all those, but they wanted the breakaways. So you could have your Spock t-shirt and your Captain Kirk t-shirt. You know what I mean? You could get most bang for the buck, which works out great when companies hire someone like me. Like they'll pay a premium price for one piece of artwork, but then out of that one piece of artwork, they can extract 15 pieces in little segmented things. And I try to illustrate everything in a final file, even if it's like, you know, a piece that's so big with a vignette scene that big, I'll illustrate that initially full scale.
Really big.
So you could utilize that on another large reproduction. And then when it goes into implementing that final piece of key art where it's the montage or something, you kind of have to re-illustrate and dummy it down a little bit on certain things to make it read properly. But
I love that the ship art as well. I mean, that's pretty cool.
That was for a European licensor, actually.
Okay.
That's a while ago. I think I'm gonna say it wrong. Iron Gut Publishing. I forget.
I don't know that one, but
I don't know. It was an overseas publisher, but they had some really cool stuff. I was doing a couple Star Trek pieces with them, and they also had a Muhammad Ali license.
Oh, neat.
And they inquired about that one. I was like, yeah, totally.
Wow. That's cool.
You gotta. I mean, I love the fandom and the sci-fi, but really just pop culture in general. Whether it's, I mean, Prince, Muhammad Ali, Star Wars, zombies. Like I'm into all of it. So it's fun when you get to kind of spread your wings a little bit and not just be pigeonholed and doing like one thing only, you know?
So, yeah. And we're going to show one more piece, which is like, I won't even introduce it. We'll just put it on there hopefully soon. And then we can have like, it's going to be someone very, very popular, the Mandalorian with the Baby Yoda.
What?
The Mandalorian.
What's this Baby Yoda you speak of?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I have it wrong. Maybe it's called The Child. Oh,
Child,
yes, that one.
I've heard some hubbub about it. Catching on.
Yeah, it's just a little thing.
Yeah.
You know, growing up there. So that's a big one lately, I'm sure. That's been very popular for you.
Again, super fortunate for that's what you get when you pester people for like 10 or 15 consecutive years of portfolio reviews. You finally either get hired or blocked. Or you know.
Well, I'm glad that you got hired because that piece is amazing and I'm sure it's very, you know, like really, really doing well for you as far as sales and such.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was popular. Like that was again kind of one of those pieces where that is actually the imagery on that piece was kind of handpicked from like 3 or 4 other pieces that I had done for season 1 Mando. I did a pretty decent amount of the key art for that with licensing over at Lucas, and we did the same thing though, the same process that I've been explaining, whereas like here's your character, pull them out, put them here solo with the sun, here with the whole crew, the sun, you got a rock background with the city.
So you can pull in other elements
from other
ideas.
And it's cool because it's like we try to do it to a degree, I think, with most of the companies I work with, where I'm the one doing most of the extracting and providing the different elements as opposed to just like the dude in the graphic design department at, you know, Bob's Mugs or whatever. Is that generic enough? I don't think I offended anyone. Bob's Mugs.
But it provides consistency too, because if someone's going to collect your art, then it all looks like it sits together.
It looks right.
Blended together.
It's like, you know, we're pulling back the curtain a little bit here, but it's not anything. everyone is doing it. It's not like some industry secret, but
Right.
yeah, Paul provides me with a little bit of extra cash, you know, because we can do it. And then one licensor may reach out and be like, hey, we love that piece. Could we utilize it this way? And what would that fee be? And it's minimal because it's already, everything is done. It's kind of just the fun part of like, yeah, sure, we can rescale things, scooch things around, maybe add a different cloud line or something goofy like that to make it truly unique to that licensor. And I mean, if that's one thing, as you know, with licensing, if you can get like a unique product and you're the only cat with that image, that's a total win for you and your product line.
That's how you stay unique and exclusive.
Yeah.
But then, you know, staying unique and exclusive, then you move on again, and now you're doing other types of posters as well. So I want to show the Jeffersons, you know, piece,
all
which
the family,
is really,
Totally.
Tell us how you got to that.
That's a long, short story. That was actually a close friend of ours from high school, a guy by the name of Brent Miller, moved out after high school to become a famous actor type thing, and stuck around and did his Los Angeles for many, many years, and just kind of stayed in that industry and never, you know, became Tom Cruise, but super smart guy, mega hard worker. He's now exec producing and working with, he's like Norman Lear's kind of right-hand man-ish type thing. So he's doing all of these new Norman Lear holiday specials you see, these animated series they've been doing, the reboots of some of Norman Lear's classic TV shows, as well as revitalizing just when you look at Norman Lear's catalog of work, you start realizing the dude pretty much was the babysitter for like 3/4 of America in the 80s.
It's true. His content, we were always watching it.
It's insane. So yeah, he's doing these really great things. And that first piece there, I believe that's the one you're showing.
The Jeffersons.
And they did that reboot and, you know, recast it, but it's such a fun thing because it's like, you know, they rebuilt all the original sets. It was still off of the original scripts. It wasn't like a 2020 version of, it was like they went old school with it all. I mean, you got the Star Wars tie-ins, got Woody there, you know, Woody's playing Archie Bunker, and, you know, he's been around the Star Wars universe a little bit now.
So he called you up to do the artwork for it?
He did. That first piece of artwork that you guys are showing was it was not a piece that was used commercially. It was actually a gift for all of the actors and producers and cast. I see that.
No, not you. It's the.
I know. Like that. Ain't nothing bad. Pulling back all the curse words and everything. Why
nobody's doing that.
So that piece was simply a gift that we created here. You know, I did the artwork and everything, and then we made these beautiful clay prints of them, and they went out. But I mean, they went out to like, well, everybody on the poster there, like Jimmy Kimmel, and names that this dude that thought he would do the Sunday Kroger grocery store ads in Toledo was just like, what? That's going where? Oh, wow. So,
it's hard to believe you come so far, right?
Yeah. And it went from there, and we're still doing some great things, doing quite a few different projects with Norman Lear's properties with Brent and Act 3 Productions. Like another really sweet group of people to get kind of co-aligned with out there in the magical Hollywood land. And I mean, that's like royalty, you know. It's cool.
That is good to be close to that.
Yeah,
that's really cool. So do you have actual examples? You were talking about it while we were showing some of the artwork, but do you have actual examples of where your image has shown up on product? Do you have anything to show?
I do. You saw me running around here.
Come on, just tell us.
Also organic. Got a car.
Ooh.
I don't know if you can. I guess you can see it.
Look at that.
Yeah, so this was, I think this dude's in Star Wars. This is a series of watercolor paintings I'd done with Acme Archives back in the day. We would go out and do, before Star Wars was an actual land, they had these things called, you know, Star Wars weekends. And I would do a lot of those Star Wars weekends throughout the year and gallery signings out at Disney and debut new Star Wars artwork and do like exclusive things. And this one year we did a Bounty Hunters set. So it was all the Bounty Hunters from ESB, and trying to figure out what could set it apart. We did that watercolor style I was referencing.
That's really cool.
It's kind of working. But
really nice.
Yeah, so I did all those.
And Denker gets no love.
Doesn't. Did here. I mean, he got not just love, but he got a good time fan. Come on.
No, it's cool.
So yeah, it's cool seeing stuff like that kind of recycle years later, because it was a neat little 11 by 17 portfolio set that was exclusive to the show, a couple hundred units or whatever.
Right.
And freaking 5, 6, 7 years pass, and someone pings me, a friend whose wife worked on the branding there at Hot Wheels, like, dude, is this your work? I'm like, it is my work. And he's like, you got the whole series, and each car's got the art on it from the character, and the back, the backboard is my artwork, because all the stuff goes into the files of Lucasfilm, as you know, and eventually some licensor down the road may grab it.
Yeah.
So it's everything from like little, lots of toy packaging, things of that nature, and then some of the Walking Dead stuff that I had been working on, which was,
that's pretty neat. Yeah.
This artwork here was originally done for the season premiere, the season finale.
Yeah.
One of them, opening or ending, something like that. But it was part of the fine art line that I'd done with AMC. The season wrapped up, and they got to the point of doing the steel case, the little Target exclusive steel book. So they not only did that, but then I did a tribute piece, again, part of the fine art line, when Carl had passed.
Yeah.
So that was one way licensors utilize the artwork I developed for the fine art stuff into real life product and merchandise. So and it's steel.
It's
not cardboard.
That's
There's no bent corners on here.
So it's completely collectible.
Yeah, it is. But that's like a thing I always I'll go to like the kids' schools and stuff and do like little mini cons at the school and explain to the kids, like, you too can be an artist. But it's like, those are the things that everybody kind of takes for granted and doesn't realize, because my name's not on there. You know what I mean? That's not a thing like that.
Right.
But I say, when you go through the Targets and Walmarts, like all that punchy, grabby visual stuff that you see, there's probably a dude like me sitting in an office and or possibly a basement somewhere in the Midwest working on it.
Yep.
And, being very stressed over very fun things sometimes.
I can't say how many times I was
right.
stressed over an action figure not shipping.
I know, right?
So,
if they only knew.
But what I love about this though is that it shows the careers that we can have in fandom, right? So you have a piece there that you were going to show real quick.
Oh, I got 2 more things I'm showing.
You better hurry up then before IG cuts us off.
All right, there's that. That was another one of the fine art. Yeah, that was a tribute piece for Rick Grimes. That was the backdrop on Talking Dead. And 7 years of my life, from 2013 and until right before COVID hit, I had spent doing over 1,000 illustrations for Lucasfilm for the entire 9 films. Basically, I've roughly done an illustration for every minute and a half of screen time. So it's really storybook collections. Then these transcend into.
That's a lot of illustrations though for a minute and a half of screen time. When you flip
through the books, you can see. I mean, it's every single page. It's probably the most comprehensive retelling of the Star Wars saga ever.
And you were part of it.
Because 7 years of my life I was a part of that. That was my main job in it, just until recently. And then kind of icing on the cake, little thing that comes out of nowhere because friends recommend your name for a project, is when Time Magazine calls and hits you up for a cover of Time, and you're like, you get the email, and they were so secretive.
You gotta frame that one.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that one was cool, and not only cool at that, but remember how I said they don't include your name? So not only did they throw the actual signature on the cover, they really did the nice icing on the cake, and they gave me a big write-up in the back of it. So it was like,
that's amazing.
That's the kind of stuff that happens when you stay persistent and bug people to the point of pestering, to the point of legal things.
And talent. And working hard.
And so if you don't get a restraint order, you eventually get Time Magazine.
That's right. Well, Brian, tell us what's new. Where can we find you?
Thank you. I forgot. I was getting ready to say, please let me mention a few more things.
Yes.
Obviously, BrianRood.com and, Brian Rood on Facebook and all that kind of good stuff. And Instagram and Twitter are both at BRood1, BROODONE. But I'm also keep scooping up some really fun licenses. I don't have anything to show yet, but one of them is for a really cool show on Netflix. Starting it next week, I know, right?
I wonder which one that would be.
Let's hint around, like saving it for a rainy day. You might need an umbrella. No, we're going to be dropping some cool stuff with that really soon under Brian Rood Art with my licenses. Creep Show.
Wow,
I get
that's
the
awesome.
first piece out. A lot of these I'm doing, it's my license,
is big
but
now too.
we're partnering with like Sideshow on some of it for distribution. So they're currently carrying a couple of different Walking Dead ones. They have the Creep Show piece, the first Creep Show I did.
Like shout out to sideshow.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Their fine art program here. Just to show folks. So this is
that's so cool.
One of the Jaclays for the first one we did for Creep Show. Got a lot in store for this, a lot more in store with not just the main Walking Dead television show, but Fear of the Walking Dead and the entire universe, the new Walking Dead show coming out, the Beyond. Just, it's going to be a super fun year. We have a lot of really great things happening. Some really cool fine art programs we're developing with all of these things.
That's great. Yeah. I'm so glad that you've come so far. It's so great to see
how
far you've come and how many
From a
other
basement party in San Diego with Hasbro to this. You kidding?
Oh boy, those are the days. Well, for those of you who can't be on San Diego Comic-Con this week, just as us, there's a virtual version. Unfortunately, we won't be there, but we'll be watching along with everybody else.
I'll be there stalking some editors, man. I'll still be out there hustling. No.
That's right. That's right. So thanks again, Brian. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the times that we get together and have some good laughs, totally. Just like now.
It was cool hanging out for a little bit virtually.
Nice. It's fun. And then thanks everybody again for coming and watching this 1 hour segment. Hopefully it's worth your time and you feel like you want to share it. Drop us a line.
And if not, just be nice and say it was fun.
Exactly. A little like, a little heart doesn't hurt anybody, especially during these times.
Yeah, exactly. No frowning faces.
That's right. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks,
Thank you,
Brian.
everyone.
Talk
and thank you guys.
All right. Bye.
See ya. Bye.